Alright, we're live, ladies and germs. First short track race of the year, and it was definitely a mixed bag, to say the least. There were fewer cautions in this race than in previous races, which is good, but as per the usual, NASCAR had a massive fuck up during this race. Go figure. But we're going to be getting into all that, and we also got some news to go through, so what do you say? Let's get into it. Our 7th race of the year. This is the Fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packer Man, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel here on April the 3rd, 2022. Where tonight we're going to be covering the 2022 Toyota Owners 400 from the Richmond Raceway, the first short track race of the season. My first thoughts on the race. I mean, you want to talk about a fucking mixed bag. This was certainly it. Probably had some of the longest green flag runs of the season, the fewest cautions of the season, and some strategy thrown in for good measure. So that's good. The problem is, when you have green flag runs like they did at Richmond today, you gotta have some action to go along with it. Some side-by-side racing, all that good stuff. You can't just rely on the long-term strategy to keep people's interest. And unfortunately, a lot of this race was boring as fuck. I'm sorry. I mean, I enjoy the fact that there was green flag racing and it made the race feel a lot shorter. I mean, this race was just a shade over 3 hours, which is, I think, perfect in terms of race length. I think only having 3 caution flags during the entire race certainly helped. But the problem is when you have a track that's as hard to pass as Richmond, I mean, a lot of this race just felt kind of dull. Eventually the strategy opened up, and it eventually came full circle by the end of the race, and we actually had a pretty good finish. And we also had the longest green flag run to end a race this season at a little over 100 laps. When was the final caution flag, I wonder? Double check my notes here. The final caution flag was 2:58. So, probably about 130 some odd green flag run to end the race, which is by far the longest this season. Actually, I think if I can go on to Racing Reference, I think it actually tells you when the green flag actually happened. Because Racing Reference, if there's one thing they do well, it's they take very good statistics. And of course, they're statistics that I use for my race reviews. Yeah, here you go. The last green flag happened on 264, so we had a 137 lap green flag run to end the race. Stage 2 went caution free. Average green flag run, 60.8 laps. That's pretty damn good. Percent of race run under caution, 8.8%. So in terms of green flag racing, there was no shortage of it here. It's just that we just didn't see as much passing, for the important positions as we had hoped for. But it all came full circle with the strategy. It all came together at the end, and we saw a good finish at the end. How the strategy kind of overlapped over each other, which was pretty cool. It's just that some of the racing was, pretty dull, and NASCAR had a fuck up on top of that. We're going to be getting to all that here before too long. But we say we go ahead and get into this here. Not much ranting and raving. I'm going to save that for the end of this review for NASCAR because of their fuck up. And if you notice what the thumbnail for this race was, you probably know what I'm alluding to. But we'll get to that when we get to it, like I said. But we do have some news to get to, so let's go through the news of the week, shall we? And the orange one is climbing up my leg. What you want? Can you hear this cat? Look at this cat. This little shit. Anyway, not really much in the way of headlines, but there's some of the shit. Well, one's not really a headline. It's more of a kind of a rant piece. And it's based on what happened yesterday in the Xfinity race. But first up, as per the usual, we're going to take a look at the viewership. Circuit of the Americas pulls in 3.731 million viewers, so a little bit less than 4 million viewers. Cat, get off the damn keyboard. So a little bit worrying because it's a road course, and even though the race wasn't totally spectacular, I thought the finish more than made up for it, and I thought the race overall was pretty good. Well, pretty solid, I should say. I mean, there were some parts that were pretty meh, but I thought the finish made up for it, so, I mean, that is a little bit concerning. But, I mean, they're still pulling in over 3 million viewers. Well, close to 4 million viewers, which is about their average for the season so far. And as was to be expected, the number 23 team for 2311 Racing was penalized for a loose wheel at COTA. Crew chief, jackman, and tire changer were suspended for 4 weeks for the loose wheel that happened during the Circuit of the Americas race, which really shouldn't be a surprise. So, like I said, not much in the way of news, but then there's this little thing that I wanted to talk about. NASCAR fans are fucking hypocrites, and here's why. So, we saw a battle at the end of the Xfinity race yesterday between John Hunter Nemechek and Ty Gibbs. They're teammates at Joe Gibbs Racing. And there was a moment late in the race where Ty Gibbs on the last lap basically door checked John Hunter Nemechek out of the way. They were side by side and going down the back stretch, and then going into turn 3, Ty Gibbs basically door checked John Hunter Nemechek out of the way. And a lot of people were crying foul over this, saying, oh, that was a dirty move, this, that, and the other, and all this other bullshit. Not realizing that John Hunter Nemechek was dooring Ty Gibbs earlier, not too many laps before that. And let's not forget John Hunter Nemechek's history of trying to door check someone into the wall. Remember a certain race at Mosport a couple years ago when he door checked Cole Custer into the fucking outside wall coming into, not just door checked, he basically shoved them all the way into the outside wall and held them there while they raced across the line in the grass. And of course, there was the infamous Cole Custer spear where he tried to fight John Hunter Nemechek after the race. So, John Hunter's not innocent in this shit either. I mean, he's done it himself. I mean, he said he was upset about it, but here's the fact of the matter, John. You would have done the exact same fucking thing. And what pisses me off is the fact that there were people there are tons of people that were crying foul on social media like, oh, that was a dirty move. Get off the keyboard, cat. There was a lot of people online that were going, oh, that was a dirty move that Ty Gibbs did right there. And all I can say is shut the fuck up. Okay? These are probably the same motherfuckers that praised Joey Logano when he basically cold-cocked Truex out of the way at Martinsville. People were raving about that move, though, right? But if it's Ty Gibbs, oh, it was a dirty move. Like I said last week, NASCAR fans are just some of the most toxic motherfuckers on the face of the planet. And on top of that, they're fucking hypocrites. You know, they'll say something's dirty unless it's their favorite driver doing it. It's like, yeah, way to go! And it's like, it's fucking stupid. I mean, I know that's the NASCAR fan base, but good God almighty. It shows how much of a fucking hypocritical fan base it's ridiculous. It shows how hypocritical this fan base is, and quite frankly, it's fucking disgusting. Yeah, I know. So, all I can say is shut the fuck up about the Ty Gibbs thing. He could have wrecked John Hunter, but all he did was force him up the track. Similar to a bump and run. You know, and here's the thing. People were raving about Chastain knocking fucking Allmendinger out of the way. I mean, the fact of the matter is John Hunter and Ty were racing pretty damn hard. Door checking each other all the way down, you know, to the finish of the race. So what's the fucking problem here? I mean, we saw a damn good race and a damn good finish. A race that saw the final stage go caution free. Exactly. So, I mean, what's the fucking problem? It just shows how hypocritical this fan base is, and quite frankly, I'm fucking sick and tired of it. Anyway, little one. What do you want? Huh? Little shit. But that's pretty much it for the news of the week. So let's go ahead and get into the race review itself. So this is our 132nd episode of the Fuel, the Toyota Owners 400 at Richmond Raceway. Title of the episode, Playing the Long Game. Careful, you little shit. And that's pretty much what this was. Lots of green flag racing. Lots of strategy played out. It just sucks that a lot of it was just boring as shit. You know, we were just basically waiting, you know, to get to the meat of the story. And a lot of the, you know, racing in between was just snooze-inducing. But here we go. Let me get to my notes here. Alright, so here we go. Toyota Owners 400 race notes. There were 3 drivers that had to go to the rear of the field. Cindric had to go to the rear of the field because he had changed brakes, I think. It was something with his brakes, which was an unapproved adjustment, so he had to go to the rear. And there were 2 drivers that had 3 times tech inspection failures pre-race. Justin Haley in the 31 and Greg Biffle in the 44, both of which also had to do a drive-through penalty to start the race, which both did right off the bat. Careful. You alright? One of the little ones tried to jump up on the desk. You okay? You okay, furball? Little shits. Anyways, so here we go. Stage 1, 70 laps. So stage 1 was the shortest out of all of them, and then you have stages 2 and 3, which I don't know where they come up with numbers for these stages, but it's... What? What do you want, butthead? Anyways, stage 1, 70 laps. Ryan Blaney starts from the pole. Pretty much dominated stage 1. Nobody could get around him. He leads lap 1. Top 3 of Blaney, Byron, and Kyle Busch were within half a second of each other at this point. Truex gets by Briscoe for 4th. Kurt Busch had mechanical issues, which resulted in our first caution of the day on lap 10. Oh, by the way, no competition caution this week. How about that? I think they finally heard some of us complaining about it and saying, yeah, enough with that shit. So that was nice to see. But we had our first caution on lap 10 when Kurt Busch comes to a stop on the backstretch. No fuel pressure. Turned out they had, I think it was something wrong with the fuel injection system. Fuel injectors, I think it was what it was. God damn it. Son of a bitch. There we go. Fucking cat. Anyways, yeah, I think it was fuel injector issues, so they had to go behind the wall for quite some time to get it fixed. Some cars come down for service. Blaney leads on the restart. Ross Chastain got a great restart and gets by Truex for 4th and challenges Kyle Busch for 3rd. Pretty much the hottest driver on the circuit right now. We have a battle for 6th between Briscoe, Bell, Logano, Jones, and Harvick. So we have a 6-car battle right here, or a 5-car battle, excuse me. Both Chastains bonked doors off turn 2, and that's Briscoe and Elliott. But no harm, no foul there. Elliott starts moving towards the front up to the 8th position. Kyle Larson restarted 32nd and is now up to 15th on lap 50. Chastain gets by Kyle Busch for 3rd. Elliott gets by Logano for 7th and then by Bell for 6th. Truex gets by Kyle Busch for 5th, and Ryan Blaney wins stage number 1. So not a whole lot happens in stage 1, mainly because it was a short stage, 70 laps. Everyone comes in for service and Blaney wins the race off pit road. So now we come to stage 2, which is 160 laps. Alex Bowman got penalized for pitting out of the box. In previous years it was a 1-lap penalty, but in this case it's now tail end of the longest line. That's something they changed for this season. Blaney leads the start of stage 2. Elliott does not get a good restart. He actually spun the tires on the restart, drops back to 5th. Kyle Busch was up to 4th on the restart. Kez and Byron bow for 8th. This was one of Keselowski's best runs of the season. Ross Chastain, like I said, the hottest driver in NASCAR, is up to 2nd at this point. Bell gets by Chastain for 2nd. Bell really needing a good run. Elliott gets by Busch for 4th, and that's Kyle Busch, since Kurt Busch is pretty much out of it. If I say Busch, it's Kyle Busch. Logano gets by Truex for 6th. Then Truex kicks off green flag stops on lap 125 because, believe it or not, tires actually made a difference here. So he kicks off green flag stops on lap 125. Logano gets by Busch for 5th. Blaney pits from the lead on lap 130. And Truex actually gets ahead of Blaney on the pit stops on the fresher tires. Bell and Hamlin are playing the long game in this second stage. Hence the name of the episode. Suarez gets way loose off turn 2 but hangs on. Couldn't really tell if he was knocked loose or not. Truex gets by Hamlin for 2nd with Hamlin still needing to pit. Hamlin and Bell finally come to pit road on lap 155. So we basically had two sets of strategies here. We had the 1-stop strategy versus the 2-stop strategy. Now obviously the 1-stop strategy would allow you to save a set of tires, whereas the 2-stop strategy allowed you to get on fresher rubber just in 2 stints, basically breaking the stage up into 3 different stints. Truex cycles to the lead. Harvick gets by Buescher for 8th. Logano by Busch for 3rd. Harvick gets by Keselowski for 7th, so Harvick was looking good in this race. Elliott gets by Busch for 4th. Logano by Blaney for 2nd, so there was some passing up in the top 10 at this point. Chastain kicks off the 2nd round of green flag stops on lap 177, and Truex comes in from the lead on the next lap around. Bell cycles back to the lead, going on the 1-stop strategy. Blaney runs Chastain up the track in turn 3, and Chastain bumps him in retaliation for that. Chastain was not happy about that one. Truex starts closing fast on Bell for the lead. Like I said, 1 stop versus 2. Harvick gets by Busch for 8th. Bell finds himself in heavy lap traffic. Chastain gets by Hamlin for 3rd. Truex easily gets by Bell for the race lead for our first pure lead change on lap 212. So just past the halfway point of the race, we finally get our first pure lead change. We have a battle for 3rd between Chastain, Blaney, and Logano, and Truex wins stage 2. So a slightly more interesting stage 2. Everyone comes in for service, and Truex wins the race off of pit road. So now we come to stage number 3, 170 laps. Truex leads the start of stage 3. We had some 3 wide in the mid-pack. Logano and Bell fight hard for second. Chastain gets bumped by Blaney in retaliation for the earlier bump. But Kyle Busch actually ends up taking advantage and passes them both. Then we get our second caution on lap 247. Cody Ware gets put into the wall in turn 2 off of Eric Jones's bumper, and that was confirmed later on. I actually put in a question mark by off Jones's bumper, but it turned out it was off the 43 car. Several cars come in for service under this caution. Truex leads on the restart. Harvick gets around the outside of Blaney for 5th. Then we have our third caution on lap 258 when Austin Cindric gets spun by Cole Custer after Custer gets door checked by Ty Dillon. So it wasn't necessarily Custer's fault in that case. And at this point I'm thinking, oh great, now we're starting this shit again with stage 3 just dumping cautions on us. Thankfully, this was the final caution of the race. So we have a 137 lap run to end the race. Everyone who didn't pit under the previous caution come in under this caution. Logano had all sorts of problems, was unable to jack up the car on the left side because I guess the jack locked up or something like that. There was something wrong with the jack, so they couldn't get the car up and pretty much lost all of his track position. He was second at the time. William Byron stays out and leads on the restart, and he would be a factor for pretty much the remainder of the race. He actually ended up leading 122 laps on the day. Truex gets by Suarez for second, and Blaney follows suit for third, with Hamlin and Busch also getting by Suarez as well. Harvick gets by Austin Dillon and Chastain for the 8th position. Hamlin gets by Blaney for third, and Busch gets by Blaney for 4th. Kyle Larson finally cracks into the top 10 on lap 282, after being pretty much non-existent for most of the race. Harvick gets by Bell for 6th, so Harvick's coming forward to front in a hurry. Buescher kicks off green flag stops on lap 297. Larson gets by Bell for 6th. Byron pits from the lead with 89 laps to go. Truex decides to flip the script and tries to go the long one, a one-stopper. It looked like Byron was going to go for a two-stopper, but then switched in midstream and went for a one-stopper. Pretty much went about 100 laps on old tires. 4 wide nearly goes wrong in turn 3. Couldn't exactly see who all it was, but that was pretty something. Fortunately, that was not a caution. Truex pits from the lead with 77 laps to go because there were several drivers that were coming in as well, and it kind of forced Truex's hand. Byron cycles back with the lead. Truex back into the top 5 with 69 to go, but is 13 seconds back of Byron. Larson threads the needle between Buescher and Reddick for 8th. Keselowski kicks off the final round of green flag pit stops with 53 laps to go. And it was at this point that Kyle Busch gets posted for tape on the grill, which is illegal. We'll get back to that. We'll be back to that in a minute. Byron maybe doing a one-stopper. I put a question mark, which he actually ended up doing. Truex starts closing on Byron for the race lead, and it looked like maybe Larson with a shot at sniping this one. And then it turned out to be Hamlin and Harvick, because with about 18 to go, they were like 8 seconds back, and then all of a sudden it was down to 3 seconds, and they were coming in a hurry. So all of a sudden, this strategy started to all come together, and you had the guys on the old tires trying to hold on, and you had guys on the newer tires coming hard from behind, and, well, the two-stop strategy ended up winning this race. Truex started closing in on Byron in the closing laps, but Hamlin and Harvick were closing faster on Byron and Truex. Hamlin gets by Truex for second, and Harvick gets by Truex for third. And then Hamlin passes Byron with 4 laps to go, and basically leads that amount of laps for the most part. Harvick gets by for second, tries to get to Hamlin to try to maybe do a classic bump and run, but Hamlin is able to hold off Harvick after getting the second pure lead change of the day to win the Toyota Owners 400. He came in with 0 top 10s and was out of the top 20 in points, and now wins and locks himself into the playoff. Well, for the time being. Yeah, very mixed on this one. On the one hand, the strategy ended up playing out at the end of a long green flag run, the longest green flag run of the season, which I like. But it felt like it took way too long to develop. Like there were a lot of double spots um, when that strategy was developing. I mean, it all worked out in the end, but yeah, it felt like it took way too long to get there. So let's go to our stats and awards. Cats. Shit, and I meant to hide all this. Whoopsie doodle. Oh well, whatever. We'll do it now. So total laps, 400 laps, 70, 160, 170. Overall lead changes, we had 13 overall lead changes. The same amount as Circuit of the Americas. This was a short track race with more laps. And you ended up with the same number of overall lead changes as a road course. I mean, at least you had 2 pure lead changes though, which is 2 more than we had at COTA, so I guess there was that. We had the fewest number of caution flags this season with 3, so that's good. And we had 3,072 green flag passes. Unfortunately, that only averages out to 8.4 per green flag lap. COTA had fewer laps and 500 fewer green flag passes, but they managed to about equal that with fewer laps. Yeah, so in my opinion, this race was not as good as COTA's was. Just my opinion. Lap Leader Award goes to Ryan Blaney, who led 128 laps. Unfortunately, this is the 10th time he's led more than 100 laps and is yet to go to victory lane. Star of the race and reject of the race. Star of the race was a tough one because you had a lot of guys that led a lot of laps but didn't end up winning. So nobody really stood out in this one, to be honest. So I'm going to give it to Kyle Larson. The last couple weeks have been dog shit for him. He actually dropped to 16th in points coming into this week. Was pretty much nowhere for the majority of this race, but comes back and salvages a top 5 run. And I'd say that earns him Star of the race. Which brings us to reject of the race. The 18 team / NASCAR officials. Let's go back to that tape that was on the 18's grill. First, let me bring up Twitter. Because there is a rule that Bob Pockrass brought up that we need to look at. So, the radiator air inlet must be covered with a grill screen or a perforated plate with a maximum thickness of 0.070 inches. The open section, hole, squares, etc. pattern must be isotropic. The grill screen plate may be reinforced on the interface with vertical and lateral bars with a maximum frontal width of 0.38 inches and maximum depth of 1 inch. Reinforcement bars will not be permitted to direct or obstruct flow. Here's what he circled. This is what the infraction was. Tape and any other static dynamic method to control cooling flow either in front of or behind the front fascia surface will not be permitted. So this is a new rule for this season. You cannot put tape on the grill to control cooling flow. In other words, add or reduce drag to the car. Now, here's the thing. The 18 team really should have known better than to do this. I think they were actually going to put tape on the brake ducts, which would have made sense. I mean, which is actually legal. Which is actually allowed, but I guess they misjudged where where the brake ducts were and actually put it on the grill, which is not allowed. So therefore, that's why Kyle Busch received the black flag. So, the enforcement of the rule is correct by the rule book. Here's what I take issue with, though, with the NASCAR officials. Apparently, this tape had been on the grill for 200 laps. There's actually video evidence of this where you could see a big piece of neon tape. It's basically, I mean, you can see it on the thumbnail for this video, for this review, where basically you can see the big neon tape on the grill. And there's video evidence of it being, you know, about 100 some odd laps before this ruling took place, where the tape was on the grill. You could clearly see it, clear as day, and yet the NASCAR officials didn't do a goddamn thing about it until the most important part of the race. So you're meaning to tell me that NASCAR officials basically waited 200 laps, or didn't even realize that the tape was on there until 200 laps after it had happened? To put that into perspective, 200 laps of a 400 lap race, that is half the fucking race. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I don't give a fuck how you feel about Kyle Busch, whether you love him or you hate him. I know some people still hate him, and I can understand that. But at the same time, this is fucking bullshit. Okay? While they may have gotten the ruling correct, they did it way too late. Way too late. It should have been told, hey, you gotta get that tape off the grill way earlier. Like, pretty much when it happened. I mean, why the fuck are NASCAR paying these officials, you know, when they're not even, when it seems like they're not even doing their fucking jobs? I mean, and this is on national fucking television, for fuck's sake. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. I know NASCAR's probably not going to give a fuck, but it's just yet another example of how fucking shit ass the NASCAR officiating is. How incompetent the NASCAR officiating is. It's fucking pathetic. I mean, the NASCAR officiating team, they are doing absolutely nothing to help their cause as far as me saying positive things about them. And while I agreed with them on a ruling from the Daytona 500, I mean, that's an agreement that's few and far between. A lot of times, these NASCAR officials just don't get it right. I mean, I guess in this case they did get it right. The problem is the timing of it. I mean, it was 200 laps past what should have happened. Unacceptable. With that in mind, let's go to your race results and point standings. First, your top 10 results for the Toyota Owners 400. Denny Hamlin with the race win, only leading 5 laps on the day, but they were pretty much the most important laps. Harvick comes home in second. William Byron led 122 laps, comes home in third. Truex, who looked like he was in the catbird seat for a while, ends up fourth after leading 80 laps. Kyle Larson coming from nowhere to get a top 5 run. Christopher Bell led 63 laps on the day, comes home in sixth. He sorely needed a good run. Ryan Blaney started from pole, led 128 laps, the most laps of the day, but once again does not come home with a victory. Comes home in seventh. Alex Bowman sneaks into the top 10. Had a penalty earlier in the race after pitting out of the box. Started 28th. Still ends up with the top 10. Kyle Busch had that penalty, but still comes home in ninth. And Austin Dillon sneaks into the top 10 somehow, some way. Which brings us to the point standings, and it is tight at the top. Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney are tied for the points lead right now at 241 points. Martin Truex Jr. is third, 19 back. You have William Byron in fourth, Joey Logano fifth, Ross Chastain in sixth. Didn't have a very good finish. I mean, he finished top 3 in the first 2 stages, so he got some pretty decent points. But he actually ended up 19th. The car just kind of fell away from him. Alex Bowman is 7th, Kevin Harvick 8th, Chase Briscoe 9th, and Kyle Busch rounds out the top 10. Your top 16 at this point: Eric Almirola, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric, and Austin Dillon. And then the rest of the top 20: Eric Jones, Kurt Busch, Chris Buescher, and Denny Hamlin finally sneaks his way back into the top 20 after having 6 shit-tastic races to start the season. So what would the points look like under the F1 system? That's what they would look like. Ross Chastain continues to lead the way with 107 points. Again, this is just for shits and giggles for anybody asking. William Byron actually gained on Chastain a little bit, gained 10 more points than him, so he's at 97. Ryan Blaney is third with 88. Kyle Larson is fourth with 80. So you can see the difference between the F1 points and the NASCAR points. Alex Bowman 5th, Chase Elliott 6th, Chase Briscoe 7th, Martin Truex Jr. 8th, Tyler Reddick at 9th, and Joey Logano rounds at the top 10. Rest of the field, Denny Hamlin jumps all the way up to 11th with his win. Kyle Busch is 12th. Daniel Suarez and Kevin Harvick are tied with 43 points. Eric Jones, Eric Almirola, and Christopher Bell are tied with 36 points and 15th. Kurt Busch and Austin Cindric are tied with 34 points. Then you have Austin Dillon with 26 points, running at the top 20. And then you have Bubba Wallace in 21st, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with 15, Corey LaJoie with 10, Chris Buescher with 9, Todd Gilliland with 6, Michael McDowell with 6, David Reagan with 4, Cole Custer, who just absolutely sucks ass, let's be honest here. Doesn't seem to matter what generation it is. This guy just sucks. He has 3 points. Justin Haley with 3, Daniel Hemrick with 2, Harrison Burton with 2, and Brad Keselowski at minus 51, still awaiting the appeal on that one. Which brings us to my final rating for the Toyota Owners 400. This was kind of a tough one to rate, admittedly. On the one hand, you had the long green flag runs, which I like, and there were very few cautions, which I also liked, and you had the strategy, which ended up coming together at the end of the race. Unfortunately, interspersed between all that was a lot of boring ass racing. Like, a lot of it was just boring as shit. I mean, there were a lot of times where I just wasn't getting into it. It just felt like it took way too long to get to the punchline. But I mean, it did all eventually come together, and we did get a good finish out of it where the two strategies intersected at the end of the race, and Hamlin basically came out of nowhere to steal one. I mean, so there's that. So I was originally going to give this race a solid 5 on the fuel gauge. One problem: NASCAR and the grill tape gaff. To me, that's just an unacceptable botch on their part, and to me, it just dings the final rating for this race. I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but this is my fucking show. I can do whatever I want. And in my opinion, NASCAR fucking up something during this race is going to affect my overall feeling of the race. Now, while Kyle Busch wasn't a contender for the win per se, it did pretty much fuck him out of a top 5. And I don't care if you like the guy or not, what NASCAR did was bullshit. It was the right call, but at the wrong time. It should have been done laps and laps and laps before that. So this race loses a point as a result of that. So this race is going to go from a 5 to a 4 as a result. So going on my Bret Hart shit, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Same as Phoenix. It wasn't a bad race. I mean, I'm not saying that this race was complete and total garbage. You know, it still had interesting moments to talk about. It's just that a lot of the racing was boring. And a lot of the shit that, a lot of the strategies just took a long ass time to develop. But when they did develop, it was pretty damn interesting. And this race would have gotten easily a 5 if it weren't for NASCAR's officiating gaffe. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. And fortunately for NASCAR, that's the lowest I've given so far this year, is a 4. So it shows you that the quality of racing so far has been pretty good, for the most part. This coming Saturday night, we're going back to yet another short track, Martinsville. And it's going to be a 400 lap race for the first time, I think, since like 1956 or some crazy shit like that. You know, a lot of people were crying about that one too, where it's like, why are they taking 100 laps from Martinsville? Who cares? I mean, it's not really that big of a deal, alright? The fall race is still going to be 500 laps, so just relax, alright? It's not that big of a deal. At least it's not as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. So that's what I'll say. But that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later. Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you jackweeds.